Hooters Airline.
Today it seems like a bad joke, but in 2003, Hooters restaurant actually got into the airline industry. On every flight, there were 2 Hooters servers that tended to passengers. The airline was based in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and offered direct flights all around the US. Surprisingly, for some medium-sized towns like Myrtle Beach, having Hooters Air service their airport was something that rippled through the economy. Hooters was responsible for boosting local airline activity and increasing jobs. Hooters made the mistake of entering the airline industry at just about the worst time possible. It was shortly after 9/11, so people were still nervous about airline travel. Oil prices were up, which crushes airline profit margins, and competitors were expanding low-fare flights that were hard to beat. The airline closed after 3 years. In the end, it was reported that the venture was a $40 million failure, making it by far the biggest bust in Hooters history.
Sega.
Remember the Dreamcast from Sega? That thing was actually legit. I mean, Sonic Adventures, Shenmue, Crazy Taxi, so good. Well, back in the early 90s, Sega was on par with Nintendo. In total, Sega sold 22.4 million consoles in North America, and Nintendo sold 23.3 million. Also, Sega had the Game Gear, which I hate to say it because it felt like only the rich kids had them, but it was better than the Game Boy. Although you did have to give it new batteries like every 20 minutes. Geez, remember batteries? Well, the gaming landscape changed forever in 1994 when Sony announced that they were entering the industry with their cd-rom based console, the Sony Playstation. And as a direct shot across Sega's bow, Sony announced that they were going to release at the same time as the Sega Saturn. Sega panicked, and their next move arguably put them on an unstoppable path to console failure. They decided to launch the Saturn 4 months early. This was a colossal mistake for several reasons. There wasn't enough product, so Sega only released the Saturn to certain stores. Game developers didn't have enough time to meet the launch date. And maybe most important of all is that when you're marketing a product, one of the most crucial decisions that you have to make is where to price it. A great way to set pricing is to see what your competitors are doing. The Saturn was the first of the next generation consoles to enter the market, so it wasn't able to compare pricing. Sega entered at $399, and immediately Sony announced that it'd be selling its console at $299. And that was the nail in the coffin for Saturn. The PlayStation sales crushed Saturns. We're talking 9.2 million Saturns sold compared to PlayStation at 102 million. Sega's CEO resigned. With weak sales, Sega wasn't able to generate the cash flow needed to adequately promote their next console, the Dreamcast. And ultimately, Sega restructured away from the console business and is now just focusing on publishing games.
Mars Incorporated.
Back in 1981, a motion picture production company named Amblin Productions called up the marketing team at Mars Incorporated. Mars is one of the largest privately held companies in the US, and under its umbrella, it has iconic candies like Twix, M&M's, Skittles, and Snickers. The reason for the call was that Amblin was producing a new film about an alien, and they were wondering if Mars wanted to make a deal. For $1 million, Amblin would feature M&Ms in the movie, and in exchange, Mars would promote the film on the M&M packaging. Mars passed on the deal, so Amblin went to Hershey's, which agreed to the same terms, but with their Reese's Pieces. The movie was E.T. the Extraterrestrial. It was directed by one of the biggest and most successful directors of all time, Steven Spielberg, and the deal has been estimated to have generated $20 million worth of exposure for Hershey's. Ouch. Reese's Pieces had a 65% jump in sales after the release of E.T., and those contributions played a massive role in allowing the Hershey company to grow into the industry leader that it is today. Pop quiz, hotshot! In this free market system that we live in, there are winners and there are losers. That's competition, baby. We've seen a lot of bankruptcies in this country, but can you guess what's the biggest bankruptcy in the history of the US? I'll give you a hint. It was in 2008. See if you can put the correct answer in the comment section below, and don't touch that dial because we'll let you know later on in the video if you're right.
Cola Wars.
April 23rd, 1985. A day that will live in infamy. It was witness to what is arguably the most disastrous brand blunder of all time. At the time, the two largest soda companies were by far Coca-Cola and Pepsi. It was basically a duopoly, and Coke had always been number one. But as you can see, in the late 70s and early 80s, Pepsi was gaining market share. This is in part thanks to its aggressive Pepsi Challenge campaign, in which consumers taking blind taste tests of the colas were surprised to learn that they preferred the flavor of Pepsi over Coke. Completely rattled by the results of the Pepsi Challenge, the CEO of Coke, Roberto Goizueta, decided to scrap their original formula and introduce a twist on the old Coca-Cola recipe. He claimed that it was smoother, rounder, and bolder, and they dubbed it New Coke. Pepsi declared a holiday for its employees, claiming that the New Coke mimicked Pepsi in taste. New Coke left a bitter taste in the mouths of the Coca-Cola customers, and the company was bombarded with a vociferous outcry. Over 40,000 furious calls and letters poured into Coca-Cola's headquarters. After just 3 months, they brought back the original formula with the name Coca-Cola Classic. So that's where that comes from. The New York Times reported that with research and marketing expenses, as well as the unsold New Coke inventory, that Coca-Cola had lost $34 million on the campaign.
Kodak.
In the camera industry, it's always important to stay focused. Kodak was founded in 1880, and for over 100 years, it was synonymous with photographs. Back then, pictures were taken on film, which you then had to go and develop into photographs. Well, in 1974, when Kodak was enjoying industry dominance, one of its engineers, Steve Sasson, started fiddling with a gadget called a charge coupled device, or CCD. He eventually figured out how to use the CCD to translate light into the digital language of ones and zeros. And within a year, he successfully built the first digital camera. Steve Sasson just delivered Kodak the Golden Goose, a technology that would drive photography into the future. So what did Kodak do with their goose? The conservative management at the company viewed digital photography as a flash-in-the-pan technology that would cannibalize their existing business. They swept the technology under the rug, and that allowed their competitors to catch up. By the time that it was clear that digital was the future of photography, it was too late for Kodak. They filed for bankruptcy in 2012. The takeaway from the Kodak story is that management needs to be shrewd enough to recognize disruptive technology and move quickly. Oh snap! I just said the word of the day, shrewd. Shrewd means having or showing sharp powers of judgment. Good synonyms are astute and discerning. See if you can use shrewd in a sentence in the comment section below, and we'll feature the person with the most creative phrase in our next video.
MySpace.
Back in 2004, the biggest and clearly the most dominant social network on the block was MySpace. This was a platform that, at its height, boasted 75.9 million unique visitors and was on track to be one of the most influential companies on the planet. But there was a critical error right in the middle of the company's meteoric rise. Rupert Murdoch, media mogul and owner of Fox News, purchased MySpace and immediately tried to monetize it. Murdoch at the helm, MySpace became rife with annoying advertisements. The user experience declined significantly, and droves of people abandoned the site for the then up-and-comer Facebook. Murdoch bought MySpace for $580 million, and he sold it 3 years later for $35 million.
McDonald's.
In 1996, McDonald's wanted to broaden their image beyond just a cheap fast food joint, so they launched a massive special advertising campaign. Instead of Ronald McDonald peddling Happy Meals to a bunch of children, these commercials featured adults eating what was McDonald's attempt at fine dining, the Arch Deluxe. All jokes aside, it actually sounds pretty good. Bakery-style roll, peppered bacon, cheese, tangy sauce, lettuce, tomato, quarter-pound beef patty. This was basically a Five Guys level burger before Five Guys was a thing. McDonald's was targeting the affluent urban demographic, but the issue is that if you have the money to buy a nice burger, you're going to go to a real restaurant. You know, like one with a plate? The Arch Deluxe never took off, and it was eventually removed from the menu after McDonald's sunk $100 million in advertising. Rumor has it that this debacle is how Ronald McDonald got his scars. It's answer time! According to TitleMax, the biggest US bankruptcy in history was investment bank Lehman Brothers in 2008. Its downfall was linked to the financial crisis, and it had around $691 billion in assets at the time it collapsed.
JCPenney.
Next up is JCPenney, which had a truly Machiavellian pricing strategy. They used to make sure that all their items were marked down from a higher price, even though that item would never have been sold at the higher price in the first place. This perfidy deceived customers into believing that they were getting a great bargain instead of simply buying cheap clothes. But in 2012, a new CEO named Ron Johnson took control of JCPenney. He decided that the old pricing strategy made the company look desperate, so he scrapped it for a more honest pricing system. But honesty was not the best policy, and JCPenney customers were going wild all over the internet that the store had raised all their prices. Johnson was fired after 17 months, and the store brought back its fake pricing system. Hey, you're still here. Thanks for watching. What business made you most sad when it closed? I'll go first. Toys R Us. Share with the gang in the comment section below, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you in the next video.